I know a lot of people who are not natural Republicans. They're not natural Trump supporters.
Yeah.
That this time around, after October 7th, were quite happy that Trump won because of a million things. I mean, I was in Israel, and you drive up to Golan Heights, and there's a Trump
Yes.
little village
Right.
named after Donald Trump. How long do you suspect that is going to last? And maybe I'm wrong. The premise of the question is wrong. But I have suspected for a while that a lot of the shifts in the Republican Party, Israel's going to be part of it. You see a very hostile coalition amongst the Tucker Carlsons of the world. You see people being fired from the NSA because they're too, quote unquote, neocon. And you see Donald Trump maybe getting the gift of a $400 million jet from the Qataris, the people who fund and sustain and give life to Hamas.
So, and I mean, also, one of the things that like Adon Alexander, the American hostage who was just freed, was freed because of the Qataris.
Yes.
So if you can free a hostage,
Yes.
then the logical obverse of that is that the hostages who stay there with your complicity. So basically, the Qataris are complicit in the captivity of the hostages, just like they're able to free them. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of Qatar or Qatar, however you say it.
It's getting
But look, here was my line on Trump to people, because I don't give election advice, and I try to stay away from politics as much as I can.
Yeah.
Because for two reasons. One is because I feel like it's an illegitimate arrogation of one form of authority for the other. I don't know more about politics than my congregants do. I really don't. And also because a rabbi's politics is almost always antecedent to their becoming a rabbi. It's like all of a sudden they discover the Torah says exactly what they thought before they become. So I always used to say to them, whatever president is best for America is best for Israel. So you have to decide what president is best for America. If a president is bad for America, it's not going to be good for Israel, no matter what they do or what they say. But in particular about Trump right now, what I would say is there is no way for anyone, however wise, to begin to predict what he will do or what the effect of that doing will be.
I don't think he knows either.
No, it's so incredibly, I don't want to say it's random, but it's certainly dice spinning.
Yeah. It's a bit of randomness.
So I don't know what the outcome of this legacy is going to be. I have no idea. I have tremendous concerns about it both ways, but I don't know.
I mean, it seems like when I know you avoid politics, publicly anyway, as a rabbi.
Right, exactly.
But there is a moment right now with Steve Witkoff
Right.
and some tension between Netanyahu. I mean, it feels like the Obama administration
And Mike Waltz leaving, who was clearly very close to Israel.
Correct. And that seems like it was engineered because of Iran and Israel.
Yes,
right?
I think that was a big part of it.
If you were to look at Israel now, you travel there a lot. You're very invested in the country. I mean, intellectually, maybe financially, I have no idea. But you're invested in the country. Is there anything you see politically in Israel right now that gives you pause and says, okay, this is a problem, and this is something that needs to change? Also, because of my own country and the Jews in the diaspora, if you want to have us on board, X or Y should change. Anything that
I could list a lot of things in Israel. I mean, look, the principal issue in Israel, a principal issue is the fact that the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, are not drafted. And for a while that was okay, I think, with the social compact. But when you are yourself, especially a religious Jew, the religious Zionists who do have their kids go into the army, and you're going into the army the third, fourth time, it's just an insupportable difference. And so that's a huge issue. And part of the reason that a draft bill has not been passed is because it would bring Netanyahu's coalition down.
Yes.
So there's that.
And Ben Gvir and these guys.
There's the fact that Netanyahu has been the prime minister for decades now, and it's really, we instituted, term limits for a reason, because we thought it was unhealthy for the body politic for somebody to be in charge for that long. And then there are structural issues with Israeli governments, because this was a state that was kind of cobbled together out of lots of Turkish law, British law, Jewish law, and its electoral system is patchwork
Yeah.
of craziness. Like if you and I wanted to make a party, we might be able to get a seat in Knesset. It's just so that means that a couple of people can hold the fate of the entire country in the balance. And like a lot of places, it tends towards the extremes. So you have people in the Israeli cabinet who are virtually Kahanists, which is actually outlawed in the Israeli cabinet. So yeah, they have a lot to face up to. And in that sense, by the way, October 7th probably created moments of cohesion that as time goes on, we will see what happens with that.
Talk to me about definitionally what anti-Semitism is. We all lived through an era where lots of things were called racist that I didn't think were racist.
Yeah.
We had a big hangover from that. People very skeptical of a lot of these charges.
Yeah.
Now we're in a time post-October 7th in which universities are roiled by these protests. They're going on at Columbia again. And some borderline stuff happens. Some stuff that is just normal protest happens. Everything is behind the idea of anti-Zionism. But that has to exist as a concept separate from anti-Semitism, or do you believe that they have to be the same thing?
My own diagnosis is anti-Zionism is not the same as anti-Semitism, but the Venn diagram has a huge overlap.
Yeah.
So it is theoretically possible to be, I mean, you could, for example, you could object to nation states, in which case you would be anti-Zionist. And then you would be anti-Zionist out of a principle of a nation state should not exist. But if you're okay, for example, with 40-some Muslim states, but one Jewish state somehow offends you, not because they are cruel to the Arab population, since Syria killed more Syrians than Israel has in all its wars combined in the course of a year and a half, then I think...
So the 500,000 Syrians.
Half a million. Yeah. Then I think you have to say you have a problem. You have a problem with Jews.
Yeah.
You have a problem with Jews.
The counter argument to that is effectively, the anti-colonial one, right?
Right.
This is that I never heard in my adult life, I've been involved in these debates. I've seen them. I know people on all sides of the debates. I try to engage honestly with them. I'd never seen until the past couple of years someone shout at somebody else on the streets of New York City and the streets of Berlin. I mean, that happened in maybe 1938. But go back to Poland.
I know.
That was one thing that shocked me.
Yes.
And then I said, oh, they're seeing this through a kind of Frantz Fanon lens, that this is a colonizing group of white people, which is hilarious if you ever go to Israel.
Yes.
It's not a bunch of Norwegians.
No, it's not white people.
Yeah.
And also 750,000 Jews were kicked out of Arab lands.
Yeah.
And nobody is protesting that or suggesting they should go back or they're not receiving reparations or there's no right of return. So yeah, the colonialist, a colonial power generally is one that has a land, goes to another land to get the resources of that land, and then at some point, then at some point, like the French in Algeria, they go back to France because the Algerians kick them out. Israel was a bunch of ragtag refugees who had a long history in the land. There were continuously Jews in the land forever, and their point was to both cultivate the land and eventually to share the land. That was not remember that there was never a state in Israel before Israel. The last time there was a state in Israel was when the Romans invaded in like 50, 60, 70 BCE and effectively destroyed, and then in 70 CE and 135 totally destroyed Israel. And then it was a succession of empires.
Yeah.
It was, there was the Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire, but it was never a separate state until now it's a separate state again. So it's a complicated history, and it's not an easy one to untangle. But one thing that it is not is a colonial power.